I'm Scott Al Miller. It is the 24th of March, 2022. This is Laborio, León, Nicaragua, and welcome to my daily vlog of life traveling and living in Central America. Today, I'm going to be talking and answering a question that I got from one of my viewers about what are the mosquitoes actually like here in Nicaragua. Obviously, I am outdoors a lot, so where there are mosquitoes, I am exposed to them. So I actually have a bit of mosquito information, but before we get to that, let's talk about the day, because this is my daily vlog. All right, so today being Thursday, mostly a work day. It was not a real super eventful day for most of the morning. Tonight we do have our second salsa lesson. That's Dominica and Yvonne and I going right in Laborio, just over this way. There's a dance studio and they do a lot of lessons, but they have a beginner's class in salsa. And even though Dominica and I have done a bit of salsa 10, 11 years ago, we're basically beginners now. We're starting over. You do lose these things after. It's not like a bicycle. And so we're taking the beginner classes. Lots of fun and great exercise. Great thing to do. A wonderful thing if you're visiting a country or if you're living in a country like Nicaragua, where this is a big part of the culture. Doing something like going out and taking a dance class for beginners is a perfect way to get out and experience something that, you know, there's no foreigners doing this in the dance class. This is all locals. Also, they can go dance in the local dance clubs and stuff. This is how people really dance here. So it's actually a really great way to be a part of the community and do something really fun and healthy and all that. So it's perfect. Before that though, and it was close timing, so I worked all day, did a lot of editing, did a lot of normal work, meetings and all that stuff. Blah, that's boring. Now, what we did get to do today is Walter and Lorenzo came and got me towards the end of the day, so it's a little bit, sun's going a little bit low as we did this, but they took me over to Guadalupe and showed me, and Dominica has not seen this yet, Paul saw it, but only really quickly, and I have not been told where it was yet, other than in Guadalupe. We went and checked out a space that we are looking at for a new restaurant project in Guadalupe, which would be really cool. It's in a beautiful spot in between the universities. So if you're looking at a map, on the south side of town there are universities, and then downtown El Centro is where all the like dance clubs and big restaurants and bars and all that is. So there's a lot of traffic in Guadalupe going from the southern Guadalupe universities, which is the core thing in town, up to El Centro. Now El Centro has a little bit of university activity as well. This is a university town, so there's colleges and universities all over the place. But this is the big stretch between the majority of the universities and the downtown area. And then Guadalupe itself is one of the big barrios with a heavy population and a lot of things of its own. So this is a really cool spot logistically, that it's in the midst of everything. It's also really cool that I walked right past this restaurant on my walk back from the bus to Managua on Saturday or Sunday, whatever day I did that a few days ago. So I knew exactly where we were. So I got to go in and tour around the space, which of course is not improved yet. It is just a lot, basically. Oh, we're gonna get some wind, hold on. I keep forgetting that we gotta have a dead cat on the camera. It is so windy in León, which is great. It's what keeps the air fresh, even though it's such a really hot city. All right, but it's basically an unimproved space at this, future restaurant, but it's a gorgeous spot. Like physically it's good, but the interior is nice. There's spots for gardens and big garden walls and the ability to put in pretty much anything we want. And it's a relatively large space. So there's a lot of potential. So I'm really excited. Right now we have 3 properties out at the beach, which is another announcement I get to make today. We have finally gotten our licenses and it is official. We are opening, and we don't actually have a name yet. I'm calling it Tres Simple, our 3rd property out in Las Piñatas. If you've been watching the videos, I wish I could have gone out to actually get film of this, but if you go back and watch some of the previous days where I go out and film on the beach, we have our old property, the hotel that everyone knows. I assume if you're watching the channel that you are familiar with the hotel that we have owned for a year out on the beach in Las Piñatas, which is the beach, one of the 2 main beaches of León. And recently, about 2 months ago, we were able to get the new space, which we're referring to tentatively as the Simple Bar and Grill, or El Simple Dos, as a lot of people call it. That's a common thing here, is just to call something the second one of whatever. It's directly next door, but it doesn't expand our hotel capacity, but it expands our restaurant capacity by a huge amount. The original hotel has restaurant capacity for, we've seen 60, we really can't go past 60, and going past 50 is really hard. The new space, we assume, has room for about 100 to 120 people more, plus an entire large formal bar and some just beautiful space. So we love it. It's more of a garden-y kind of place. So that's what we've been working on for the last few months, and I keep showing you guys videos of that, so go back and watch those videos if you're not familiar. There's plenty. You can see the ones called like Bar Progress or whatever, and it's sprinkled into other ones too. So that's not anything new, but that is open, and we just got pictures of it in the last few days of just how busy it is. I will post those, not today, but real soon. You're gonna see a little bit of clips of the people packed in there. It's awesome how busy it has become. And then we just, this week, so Monday, we made kind of the deal, but it was a handshake deal and nothing was official. Now we have everything in place, and we're in the process of opening our third location at the property that directly touches that new one. It is a deck bar. We do not have the entire building. The first floor is a surf school that we're partnered with. The second floor is a new Simply bar. Like, there's nothing else to it, right? There's no, you can get food up there, but it's just gonna be run from the other restaurant. But it's really just about serving beers on a deck overlooking the beach. It is a beautiful spot. It is not real large, so the maximum capacity over there is probably a lot closer to about 20, and it's really gonna be limited. We're not gonna have it open all day. It's not gonna be doing breakfast or anything like that. It's gonna be focused on handling just a dinner and sunset crowd, right? A lot of people like to come out to the beach, sit and watch the sunset. It is a perfect location for that, and then we'll encourage people when they're done with the sunset to simply move into the other restaurants if they want to do dinner or stay and hang out longer or whatever. So it's going to have much more limited hours, being open only about 4 to 6 hours a day, most likely. But it's very exciting that we have added that space. It gives us an unbelievable amount of capacity. We're pretty sure we now have seating capacity in excess of 200 once that opens, and it will be completely opened by Semana Santa, which is the first part of April. But what we still need up there at this point to be able to open, there's a lot of things we want to do. We've got a fridge to go up there. We're going to put coolers up there. We've got to get the whole bar built out so it's really able to serve efficiently. But until then, we'll still be able to just throw coolers up if the fridge hasn't made it up in time, and sell beer and seltzers and that kind of stuff up there. But what needs to be done before we can do anything is the railings are not completely finished. The wood structure of the railings are done, but we need a netting mesh, kind of like a rope mesh around it for safety. We talked to the physical owners of the building, and they don't want to do wood because people like to dangle their feet, and they like kind of to be pressed up against it, and they want the airflow and the view, and they want that to be obstructed. So it's going to be a little bit more work, but they're going to put in a roping mesh around it instead of wood. So that just needs to be done, and then we're ready to go. That's the one safety thing we need to continue. But we have our license already. We're legally allowed to open it and sell alcohol up there. So we are fully in process on our third place, which I like to call, because it is much simpler than the other two places, but our group is called The Simple, or El Simple, and so I'm calling it Tres Simple because tres is third, or three. It's not actually third, it's three in Spanish, but the same word in French means very. And in Nicaraguan Spanish, and I'm told this is because of a French influence, you actually drop the ends of words in the same way that you do in French. So even though in French, tres, for very, is spelled T-R-E-S, the same as trace in Spanish, here in Nicaragua, trace is often said as tre. So Tres Simple is a play on, it is our third place, and it is very simple. It's just a place to sell beer on the beach with a great view. I don't know if that name's gonna stick. I'm hoping so. I think it makes sense, and people will be like, haha, that's funny. And those who don't get it, it doesn't matter. It's clearly our third place, and it's next to the other two. But so this place in León would be our first city restaurant and club. It'll be a bit different than the others, and I'm really excited to hopefully get to move forward on that project really soon. Fingers crossed. But it's really cool that we got to go see it today and at least have an idea of what we can do. All right, so that was our day. Salsa went well. We had a lot of fun. And then after that, it was just a chill evening at the house. No particular news or anything. The kids played video games. I did more editing and uploads and all that kind of stuff. Tomorrow I'm going to be heading into Managua to go see Don Quixote at Teatro El Gato in Managua, which is should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to getting to do that. So this weekend is going to be a lot of fun. We're going, the kids are staying and hanging out. This is the longest that the kids are going to be away from Dominica and I here in Nicaragua, to the best of my knowledge, because Dominica and I are going to Managua and gonna have a fun weekend. We're going out on Saturday and coming back on Sunday, so 2 nights away. Should be a lot of fun. We really need just kind of a party weekend in Managua and the theater and going out to the clubs and all that, and there's stuff she wants to go see. It's going to be a fun weekend and a break that we kind of need. We do go to Managua a lot, and she's already been this week, but that was for shopping. That's not fun or relaxing or anything. It doesn't really count as going to Managua. So, and we are in the process of booking, I need to forget all the things I have to mention. We're in the process of making our finalized plans for heading to the United States in May. We have to leave Nicaragua because our residency paperwork is not far enough along that we can't leave or don't need to leave. And so we have to at least go to Costa Rica in early May. Our plan is, once we're bothering to cross into Costa Rica, we're really at a point where we need to go back to the States. Combining the two, we don't know when we're going to have the opportunity again because of the paperwork with the residencia. So we're taking this opportunity to go spend about a week and a half in Houston. And so we're getting the plans finalized, but I think about May 5th, we're going to be heading out to go, the 4 of us, to go to Houston. Details to come very soon. We should have that finalized by early next week at the latest. And now we have some questions to answer about mosquitoes. All right, so I picked the 6th Avenue Bridge as a place to talk about mosquitoes because this is a pretty jungle area in the middle of the city and highlights the problems that we face here in Nicaragua. Yes, absolutely, mosquitoes are of concern. We live in the country with the largest portion of what is known as the Mosquito Coast. We are the It goes pretty much without saying that in Nicaragua, mosquitoes are a concern. I picked the 6th Avenue Bridge over the river because even here in the middle of Leon, it's easy to show that we're in the jungle. There is always an opportunity for mosquitoes. Nicaragua is a tropical country, and of the 2 countries, Nicaragua and Honduras, that together own what is known as the Mosquito Coast, Nicaragua has the largest portion and its traditional capital. Of course, the Mosquito Coast is not actually the home of mosquitoes, the insect, it's the home of mosquitoes, the people, but the names go together from the same region for a reason. And if you look on a map, we are connected through the same jungle down to Panama, famous for malaria and the problems with mosquitoes during the building of the Panama Canal and anytime you're in Panama. So mosquitoes are obviously a serious concern here for 2 reasons. One, it is wet and jungle almost all the time, and tropical jungle at that. So mosquitoes breed easily here. This is a place where they just live. And 2, this region of the world is famous for all of the mosquito-borne illnesses that are common here. The ones that you know or should know include malaria, dengue, chikungunya, and yellow fever. Of course, there's others, Zika, but those are much less important in this region. They're more likely to be of concern, say, northern Mexico or southern United States. These 4 are really important here. Now, we're lucky that yellow fever pretty much does not exist here. However, get your shots for it anyway, because it's terrible, and it's endemic to, well, it's endemic to Africa, but it's now very large in like Colombia and Ecuador and Venezuela and that region, which is not that far away, and a lot of travel goes back and forth. So the possibility of yellow fever transferring into this region does exist, and it can happen. And it's just awful compared to the other mosquito-borne illnesses, which mostly are not life-threatening. They're just really, really awful. Yellow fever, however, is extremely life-threatening, so you want to be protected against that, even if the others you are not. So let's start with that. Let's start with part 2. Are the diseases prevalent, and are they terrible? And the simple answer is yes, they are prevalent, especially dengue and chikungunya. Malaria is not the big concern because it's so awful that people have dealt with it to a greater degree. I have a lot of insects flying around me right now. They're not mosquitoes though, but they are getting in my face while I'm trying to talk. I'm gonna move into the sun, as uncomfortable as that is. And so because of that, they're really awful, and if you can do anything to avoid it, certainly you want to. And because of how bad those diseases are, yes, you want to have your shots. Yes, you want to take reasonable precautions against running into mosquitoes. But the reality is that there are a lot of mosquitoes. Now, I say that, Alan's gonna watch this and say, well, when I moved down, you said there weren't any mosquitoes. When I lived here 7 years ago, the economy was quite a bit different than it is today, and the country takes a lot of precautions against mosquitoes for exactly these reasons. They do carry diseases. They are a major blight on the economy and society because they send people to the hospital, they cause people to be unable to work, and those are not things that are good for anybody. Not just the individual, but they affect society. So a lot of effort actually is put into eradicating mosquitoes. What's amazing is that when times are good, they're actually able to keep the mosquito population so low, you essentially don't notice them. We lived in downtown Granada, we traveled all over the country, we basically never saw mosquitoes. Now that we live here, when the economy is suffering and things are very poor economically, the ability to put those resources into wiping out the mosquitoes has diminished, and there are noticeably more mosquitoes than there used to be. But of course, it still varies heavily where you are. If you watch my videos, when we're in Las Piñatas at the beach, we basically don't get that many mosquitoes most of the time. Sometimes we certainly do, but most of the time you don't really notice them very much. But if you walk around town, if I get closer to like Tappy House and that part of town and walk away from the beach, I will be suddenly inundated with giant black mosquitoes that are painful and everywhere, and it's hard to get away from them. So it varies quite a bit, even just in a small area, which is obvious. So if you're near a swampy area, if you're near a wild area where there's no spraying or controls for the mosquitoes, you're gonna likely run into quite a bit. But if you're in the cities, like here in Leon, we basically never have to deal with mosquitoes. We do sit outside all the time, as everyone does, and a lot of people are going to burn like citronella candles or something similar to keep mosquitoes away, but that actually works pretty well, and we very rarely have a time where we're like, oh, there's a lot of mosquitoes, or oh, I wish we weren't outside because of mosquitoes. Doesn't really become a big problem in most of the country. Most of the time, the controls and the effort that goes into it is extreme, right? They come in, they'll fumigate your house, they will inspect your potted plants, they'll inspect a swimming pool or a fountain and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do to keep there from being a lot of mosquitoes, because it affects everyone. Mosquitoes travel a long distance. If one person's not doing their job, it affects everybody in the region. So they work really hard as a society, and the government puts in a lot of effort to make sure that there are not mosquitoes everywhere, and it works for the most part. It's amazing. I'm standing out here in what should be an area completely covered in mosquitoes. I should be being bitten all over. There's not a one. I don't have to worry about it at all. You see my videos where I'm out walking all the time, and the number of times that I've actually been impacted by mosquitoes while out on these walks over the last year is maybe 5 to 8 times. It's really pretty minor. So in general, I say that you need to take some precautions, and people do, right? Everyone has off available to them, you know, the DEET spray, and people tend to sleep with open air, so mosquito netting is common. But if you have rooms that are closed or air conditioned or whatever, you don't use mosquito netting, you don't have to worry about it, right? Now, it is important to note that, you know, when we live on the beach, like my room in the office, there's almost always a mosquito in there, and over time you actually don't notice them anymore. They, for most people, will condition, and they really become not a problem. I don't notice them under normal circumstances, even when they're around. I don't feel them. Like, you really adapt in ways that's strange, because coming from the United States where I grew up, we never adapted to mosquitoes, and there was nothing of the sort. And for the several years leading up to our move to Nicaragua, we were living in Dallas, Texas, which you don't think of as a mosquito location. It's not particularly wet. It is pretty hot, but it does get cold in the winter. But when we lived there, in the suburbs, we lived in Carrollton, right against the Dallas city line. So we're in a very built-up area. Everything around us is houses and very developed and very wealthy, affluent area. Not crazy affluent, but not a poor area by any stretch. And when living there, we were in a position where we had to burn citronella candles all the time. We could never let the house have open windows. It always had to be screened or air conditioned. And whenever we wanted to use outside, and if you watch my videos, you know, we were outside all the time when we lived in Texas, we would fog the yard for mosquitoes 3 times a day. And even doing that, we were constantly coming back inside because we found it to be unbearable to be outside from the number of mosquitoes much of the day. So in comparison to coming from Texas, or from comparison to coming from New York, where I grew up, the number of mosquitoes that you actually encounter here in Nicaragua are trivial. I would call it none in comparison. There's certainly mosquitoes, but the numbers are really low, and the amount that they affect you is much, much lower than the number of mosquitoes would make you think would happen. It's simply not a big deal. but they do exist. If you're coming from a place with absolutely no mosquitoes, like a lot of Europe, you really can end up with 0 mosquitoes. Yes, you're gonna come here and be like, oh, there's mosquitoes sometimes, but there's also lots of times where I don't notice them at all. So this may seem weird, but coming from the United States, from New York and Texas and those areas, and I also lived a lot in like South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all of those areas have many, many, many times the mosquitoes that we have in my experience here in Nicaragua. And it doesn't matter if I'm in Managua, Granada, Leon, at the beach, in the mountains, anywhere I go in Nicaragua has generally far fewer mosquitoes, and far fewer mosquitoes that I notice, like if they bite me, I don't notice, compared to any of those places in the United States. There are isolated places, like I said. If I go in Las Piñas and find just this right swampy area with grass that's never been cut, there I'm going to find some mosquitoes and really notice them. But I have to go looking for them, and it's easy to avoid. Simply don't go into those little spots. The same as anywhere, you would have the same thing in any country. But what is telling is that here in the country, it is really common to not have screens. That's how little people are concerned about mosquitoes in general. Yes, they tend to sleep with mosquito netting. Yes, that says something, like there is, but in the United States, you would always have screens on your windows because you couldn't do anything for the number of mosquitoes that you have. Here, it's only when you're asleep and can't do anything about it. And mosquito netting's not only for mosquitoes, right? It's flies and just anything. But normally, most houses are open air. They have windows, they leave them open. There may be metal bars on them, but a cat can come and go, so certainly mosquitoes are coming and going all that they want. And houses like ours here are extremely common. The colonial style, where you have a big open courtyard in the middle and everyone sits outside and hangs out in an open courtyard, that's normal. So either you're inside a house that's open air, or you're in an outdoor space, either an atrium or in front of your house, and you're just outside, and people don't worry about mosquitoes, or maybe they burn a candle. They do tiny little things, but in general, the amount that we do here to avoid mosquitoes is a fraction of what you do in other places, and even doing so little to avoid them, we are affected by them much less than other places. So in general, this always comes back to bite me, pun intended, that I feel if you're concerned about mosquitoes, Nicaragua is a great location to go to. Maybe not as good as Spain, maybe not as good as Germany, right? Where you just don't have to worry about mosquitoes at all. But compared to almost any place that you're likely coming from, if you're worried about mosquitoes, this is a location you would actually choose because there are so few mosquitoes. I love how much I don't have to worry about mosquitoes anymore, having left Texas and moved here. So that's a very different perspective, I think, than is expected when talking about a country known as the Mosquito Coast. And I'm sure if you're out in the jungle of Nicaragua, you could simply die from the amount of blood loss from the number of mosquitoes. I'm not suggesting you can go on wild wilderness hikes in the middle of nowhere and not encounter a lot of mosquitoes. But when you're dealing with the villages and cities and places you would actually go as a tourist or as a resident, most people living in Nicaragua simply don't have a day-to-day worry about mosquitoes. It's kind of off the radar. As a visitor, you do want to be aware you're probably going to go places that locals do not. Places like Ometepe, the island in the middle of the lake, famous for having high rates of dengue and chikungunya out there, simply because of lots of contact with the wild jungle. You're in a completely different zone. There isn't the controls on mosquitoes out there, and tourists tend to go out to places like that, and that's why tourists tend to have a lot more exposure than people who are living here. If you're going to do that stuff, certainly be aware there can be mosquitoes. Be aware you may want to have shots, especially for yellow fever. As rare as it is, it's not worth the chance, in my opinion. I do not have my shots. I plan to get them soon. But overall, don't be worried about mosquitoes in Nicaragua, and take very, very rudimentary precautions. And if you're looking at moving rather than being here as a tourist, simply seriously consider the fact that fewer mosquitoes, very non-noticeable mosquitoes, may be a driving factor to come to Nicaragua rather than a reason to avoid it. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad I got a question. I hope that answered what you're looking for about mosquitoes here in the country, and I'll see all of you tomorrow.